Dom, you recently traveled out to Birmingham, Alabama with Peter to meet with the management team for Warrior Met Coal and to actually go down into the earth and tour some of the mines. So tell us about your trip and what you saw and did while you were there.
Yeah, on Wednesday, April 9th and Thursday, April 10th, Pete and I traveled to Birmingham, my first time to Alabama and first time in a mine. And we were able to meet with Warrior Met Coal's management team. We got dinner with them on Wednesday night, and then Thursday we spent basically the whole day with different management employees and other representatives of Warrior. Got to tour the mine, look at a couple different plants that they operate. So they are currently running two mines, and then Blue Creek is a third mine that they own that is relatively new and isn't fully up and running yet. And we were able to look at this brand new state-of-the-art facility that they're currently preparing to fully ramp up production next year in the second quarter. So at dinner Wednesday night, it was me, Peter, and one other analyst, and we were just able to talk with, I think it was the COO, basically the head guy who's responsible for, I'm gonna say, all the engineering, the mine development side. Able to ask him all sorts of questions on what goes on the day-to-day operations at Warrior. And then there was the chief accounting officer and chief financial officer were there, so we were able to ask them different financials questions as it relates to the business outlook, the financials of the company, and any other questions we had. So it was a really good time to basically know who we're partnered with as shareholders, since the management team is basically going to be the ones who dictates the results of the business. It's a commodity business, so who you're partnered with is especially important, because if you have a management team that's aggressive in maybe their financial ambitions, they may take on riskier projects than a conservative team. And I think Pete can attest that we came away very confident in the people running this organization. So
Awesome.
Wednesday was really good, and then Thursday went down into mine 7. So we took a elevator shaft. I think it was down about 2,400 feet. Then took a short car ride to where they were actually mining the wall of coal. And I'll play a quick video of what it was like to watch basically the machinery mine the coal.
No, thank you. And that's what you got to run for a few seconds, Dom?
Yeah, they said I ran it. I don't know if it was like they gave me a dummy controller and were like, "Hey, you're going to control this," but I didn't actually control it. But yeah, that machine just goes up and down all day, 24 hours. The water is there to cool down the blade, because otherwise it would get very hot. And there were I think 8 employees down there, and their job was just to, one, make sure everything was running smoothly. There's a lot of water, since there's a lot of water involved, just making sure there's not too much water accumulating in any certain area. And then the head person's job is just to make sure that it's called the long wall. You can imagine it's just a long wall of coal, and the machine is called a shear. It's just to make sure the shear is not going too deep. If it goes too deep, it potentially compromises the structural integrity of the mine. And if it's not deep enough, then basically you're just wasting energy and not taking a lot of met coal from the wall at once, and therefore it would take you more time to mine and less production, basically less revenue and higher costs to operate the mine. The only thing I'll say is this mine has very tall ceilings, maybe 10-foot ceilings, 10, 12-foot ceilings. The one Peter and I were in, maybe was 5 or 6 feet at the highest and 4 feet at the lowest. So it was much more cramped than what is depicted here.
Very nice. Sure, that was a fun time for Pete.
Yeah. I think he said he banged his head on the ceiling maybe 50 times.
Oh,
so
man.
thank God we had a hard hat on. And then after we got out of the mine, we toured one of the preparation plants. It's basically just where the mine or the coal would get cleaned, basically washed, and rots. So this whole wall is not just met coal; it's a combination of rock plus met coal. And depending on the quality of the mine, some of this mine might be 70% rock, 30% coal. So you have to separate a lot of it. Obviously, the more you have to separate, the more of the wall that's rock than it is met coal, then it's just lower production and again lower revenues and higher costs. And some walls are, I think, 50-50, maybe 60% met coal, 40% rock. So there's always going to be this, call it like sifting or separation that needs to go on. And that's what we saw at the preparation plant. And then the final thing we got to see was Blue Creek. This is a mine that they've talked about since we've owned them. It's a state-of-the-art, lowest cost mine maybe in the world. Brand new. Production is expected to fully ramp up in the second quarter of 2026. They're expecting to do about 4.8 million tons of production at the outset, and then slowly ramp it up to 6 million or 6.6 million tons over time, depending on the demand for the met coal. Like you can't even compare them. Just you've got brand new equipment that's the latest and greatest technology versus you've got a mine that's been operating for 30-40 years. So just, there's a reason it's so much lower cost because one, you've got better technology down there, and two, just the amount that they can produce at Blue Creek is significantly more. And when you can produce more, it just lowers the per unit cost of mining the coal. So all in, it was incredibly informative and obviously very appreciative of them having us down there.
Yeah, sounds like a great trip. Very informational and hands-on, whether or not you actually drove the shear or not. What was the biggest surprise to you coming out of this trip?
Yeah, I think the biggest surprise for me was just how few employees were actually down in the mine. I think just like you have like this preconceived notion back in the maybe 20s, 30s, you've got probably hundreds of people down there just whacking away at the side of the mine. And then there were 8. I think there were 8 people down in the mine, and they're producing a couple million tons of coal per year. They said that the average employee works 5 days a week, 12-hour shifts. So they're working a lot, and they are obviously getting well paid for it. The compensation that these employees are getting, they're probably trade backgrounds, unlikely to be, I'm going to say college educated. Maybe some of them have an engineering degree, but these employees can make north of $110,000, $120,000, and for somebody of that background, it's just like life-changing money. And Warrior pays their employees significantly more and also works them, a lot harder than competitors. But the passion that the employees showed was pretty remarkable. I don't know what I would think of the coal miner thinks of their job, but when I was down in the mine, I think the mine operator name was Nicholas, and like he had a smile on his face every second and could talk to me about coal mining for several hours, and he just like loved doing it. And then the other guy that we met with said something to the effect of like, we know we run our employees very hard, we have high standards, and if they're here, they have a job. And just like you could tell, he takes pride in basically running a low cost, high revenue, high profitable mine versus
Yeah.
what some of the competitors that I learned about how they operate coal mines. So it was just surprising to me, just like how much I think they loved what they did, and it was obviously reassuring to hear that. The other thing that I wouldn't know what really goes into the construction of a coal mine. In the picture here, these are called shields, and when you're mining, these are the support systems that keep the roof uh, up and from crumbling down as they slowly mine away the wall. I did not understand how important these are. I think the picture here, I think this is probably like $100 million worth of equipment. And one of the advantages Warrior has versus others is you cannot mine without these shields. And so if you imagine the video we just watched, they go up and down with those shears. And once you get to the end, you actually have to pull out these shields and then move them to the next site where you're going to mine. So if you only have one shield, you would mine that entire strip of coal. You would then pull out the shields. You then have to create another tunnel to put the shields in. Warrior owns, I think, 3 or 4 of these shields, and what it allows them to do is basically get ahead of the current strip that they're mining. So they'll have one shield where they're currently mining, and then they'll also be setting up the next mine, basically, of where they're gonna produce coal. And so when you have more of these, it results in just like no downtime of production, which again improves the efficiency of the mine, lowers costs, and allows you to produce more. When you're in really good financial position like Warrior is, you can afford to buy these. What management said was like having 2 of these is like pretty unheard of, and the fact that they have, I think, 3 or 4 is a really big advantage. So that was something I was kind of aware of.
No downtime, and then everyone who is down in the mine is essential and very efficient and passionate about what they're doing. So it sounds like a great operation.
Exactly. Yep.
So you got to talk with some of the people on the management and leadership team for Warrior Met. What were your thoughts on the actual management and their business practices? How did those conversations go?
Yeah, I think a year or 2 ago, Warrior was producing a significant amount of free cash flow every year because met coal prices were high. They had the ongoing union strike, which temporarily kind of I'm going to say reduced costs on one side and allowed them to work down inventory, which was a source of cash for them. So they had a lot of cash, which allowed them to fund the initial construction of Blue Creek. One of my concerns was, you guys are bringing on this world-class mine, you're producing a lot of free cash flow, and you also have a lot of cash on your balance sheet. Like, why don't you do something with that cash? Because you're going to be able to self-fund the Blue Creek mine. And what I took away was this company is never going to be one that basically risks the company's future. So they're never going to go out and buy back a significant amount of shares when they have excess cash, because they're always worried about tomorrow. And the way the CEO runs it, Walt Scheller, is basically he is always thinking tomorrow we're going to enter a recession, prices are going to drop, and the demand for met coal is going to decline. And so they're always going to run with a conservative balance sheet, which means just excess cash. And then once Blue Creek comes online, they will produce even more cash because Blue Creek will no longer have these spending requirements, and it'll now be generating revenue and profits. And so we kind of learned about what they plan to do with the cash once Blue Creek comes online. It's going to be a pretty similar story. They might buy back shares a little here and there. They're going to run the balance sheet with a conservative mindset, so probably pay off the remaining debt that they have, and then thereafter, it's most likely just going to be dividends. And obviously, we love a growing dividend, so it was not an issue to hear hear that. So I think you just walk away from the dinner, from the meetings with, this is never going to be a company that is going to risk the financial future. Also means it's never going to be a stock that just, I'm going to say, that goes on a long run of just incredible performance. One of their competitors, Alpha Metallurgical, had just been buying back stock hand over fist for the past couple of years, and their stock went from I don't know, maybe $4 or $5 to $200 because they bought back so much stock, and now it's back down to, I think, like $70, and now they're in not as good of a financial position, have spent all the cash that they've made, and the market environment for met coal is not the best. So they're a little more hamstrung in what they can do because of the lack of financial flexibility versus Warriors in a really good position to weather this market.
Gotcha. So with all this in mind, what are you looking for moving forward when Warrior reports their results?
Yeah, I think the next couple quarters are still going to be challenged because the price of met coal is just down, and so what I'll be looking for is just for them to continue to maintain their cost discipline, make sure that the cost of production is not inflating, because I think that's one of the main sources of competitive advantages. This management team is just going to ensure a lean cost structure, which will allow them to go through any near-term headwinds. Thereafter, Blue Creek, how quickly they go from basically 0 tons of production today to 4.8 million tons of production. They sent out samples basically of the coal to potential customers. When you're bringing on a new mine, you have no customers because your existing mines are already supplying customers, so they have to go out and find new customers. And they said that their main customer is likely to be India, steel producers in India, and I guess just how receptive right now, just given the economic landscape or the political landscape, like how receptive Indian steel producers are to U.S. produced met coal, assuming there's no further headwinds, just how quickly they can start shipping production to those countries. And then from there, it's okay, if the demand is there, how quickly do they go from 4.8 million to 6 million to 6.6? And then once they get to 6.6 million tons, they have the ability, I believe, to go even beyond that. What was interesting to learn is the Blue Creek mine, it just runs on basically a conveyor belt, and I don't know what the max amount you can put on the conveyor belt is, but the conveyor belt can carry more coal than that shear that we saw in the video can produce. So there's really no production limitations at Blue Creek, versus their other mines are basically the coal is mined, and then basically a bucket that can pick up 40,000 tons or some amount of tons, picks up the coal, brings it to the surface, and then dumps it, and then the other end of the bucket goes down, picks up the coal, and so you have 2 buckets running, and that limits the amount you could ever produce. They could only ever carry up 40,000 tons at once, and so even if they could produce 60,000, it's impossible to bring up those incremental tons that they produce. And I asked them if it ever makes sense for them to basically buy a bigger bucket, and the answer is just right now it doesn't make sense, just because it would then mean they would have to basically shut down the mine to take out the existing equipment and then put in the new equipment. And if you add in a couple months of downtime, just like the amount of revenue and the costs, just like doesn't make sense to make that capital investment. So I'll just show a couple other pictures. So this one is the shields that I said that I think Warrior owns 4 of, and how critical these are to the production. They basically, again, they just hold up the ceiling as the mine is getting or as the wall is getting mined. This is the conveyor belt that is 9 miles long. So from where Warrior produces coal at Blue Creek to where I believe it goes on a train to get shipped is 9 miles. So along this 9 miles, you have to transport it, you clean it, you separate the rocks from the met coal, and several other treatments go on. And it's just like 9 miles. You can't imagine how long a 9 mile long conveyor belt is, but it was crazy to see. And then the other thing that was interesting is like you think of a conveyor belt, and I didn't know what a conveyor belt material would be made out of, but I just think like some sort of like light fabric that you're dumping rocks on, and it's possible it rips or something like that, and then that results in downtime. And they gave us they showed us what a piece of the fabric is, and it's this incredibly thick, basically rubber with steel like reinforcements, and within it there are sensors that tell you if there is a rip, and so you can basically just like remove a portion of the conveyor belt and replace it, which results in less downtime. So that was really interesting to learn about. And then this is just basically just a mountain of coal. This is at Blue Creek. This is what they produce. I think thus far they're basically just stockpiling inventory, just making sure everything is running smoothly thus far. So
what is done with the rock that's separated out?
Where?
What's done with the rock that's separated out from the coal?
Oh, good question. I don't know. I think it's just discarded somewhere. I don't know.
Okay.
I know they'll take some of it and use it as, you've got like other stuff is like stone paths, or they'll have to build out just like beds to put the coal on top of, or other materials on top of, and they just use that as like the layer that they put stuff on top of. But the rest, I'm not sure.
What was that?
Those are all the pictures I have.
Oh, well, looks like a good trip. I'm glad I didn't have to go down into the earth that you and Peter did, but sounds like it was awesome, and you guys got some great information and have some good things to look out for in the future. Anything else you want to add?
I don't think so. I think this will continue to be a core holding. I think just it's always going to be a conservatively run company, which I think when you're a commodity producer, that's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
And just I think just the way they go about their business just makes a lot of sense to Peter and I. And I don't think anything in the near term is likely to result in something that materially changes our investment thesis. Really just excited to see what Blue Creek can do once it starts fully producing that coal, and hope to see the dividend increase over time from that.
Very nice. Well, thanks, Dom. Always good to hear about these trips, and looking forward to the next one.
Awesome. Sounds good. Thanks, Grace.